Hi, everyone. I'm Matthew DeSantis,
And I'm Kaylie Shapiro.
and welcome to another episode of NYRA Bets Road to the Kentucky Derby.
And the Kentucky Oaks.
Well, hi, everyone. Hope you all are enjoying a wonderful week and getting ready for a big weekend of racing. Myself and Kaylie Shapiro are here, and we're going to be joined by a very special guest in a moment as we preview the two Oaks Derby prep races out at Santa Anita this weekend, the Santa Anita Oaks and the Santa Anita Derby. But before we get to that, want to encourage you to press that like button and subscribe to NYRA Bets YouTube today. Subscribing is entirely free of cost, just notifies you when new videos drop on the channel. And we have race previews, full card analyses, handicapping and betting tutorials, and weekly programs like this one, along with so much more. So, like I said, press that like and subscribe button today. Well, Kaylee, we have a huge weekend of Kentucky Derby preps. I know there's some flux in the calendar, and we'll talk about that in a little bit with regards to Keeneland, but obviously racing from coast to coast here in New York with Wood Memorial Day, as well as all the way out at Santa Anita with their big day. It's just going to be a really exciting Saturday of racing.
Such an exciting weekend all around. Obviously, Saturday is going to be a huge day at Aqueduct. So, really excited to obviously be in person at the track that day, as well as the Santa Anita Derby in the Oaks. And kind of happy that Keeneland got moved to Monday, Tuesday, because it just keeps the excitement going. It's something to do on a day off. So, that'll be actually kind of nice.
Absolutely. And if you've not heard it yet, because of the bad weather that's in Kentucky, Keeneland opening day Friday, which was going to feature the Ashland for the Oaks, has been moved to Monday, as well as Saturday's races, which of course was going to feature the Toyota Bluegrass, is now moved to Tuesday. So to Kaylee's point, yeah, your Saturday freed up a little bit. We can actually breathe a little bit in between the Wood Memorial and the Santa Anita Derby rather than rushing from one to the other. But to preview these races out in California, I want to bring on our good friend, Ryan Anderson, who is a California based handicapper and content creator. He's got a lot of great content out there. Big hoof energy. You've probably seen Kaylee on those live streams talking about Aqueduct Pick 5. Ryan, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate you talking about Santa Anita's big day.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. And we're going to see you on Big Hoof Energy tomorrow as well as we go over Wood Memorial Day. So excited to see both of you back in about 24 hours.
Yes, no, some good cross collaboration opportunities for sure. And Ryan, let the folks know where they can find you on social media, what sort of programs you all have with your co-host Jackson Muniz.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm on X at 20 lengths clear, which is somewhere there. And then, on YouTube at The Gallop Out, we got 2 weekly shows. I have Get Bucked with my co-host Jackson Muniz, and then Big Hoof Energy with Jackson. And of course, my lovely co-host Kaylie Shapiro also joins us on that show. And our shows are streamed on my YouTube channel and my X handle, as well as America's Best Racing's X and YouTube channels. So you can find us there as well.
Always a lot of great content. Appreciate the perspective and always enjoy watching what you guys say every week. So definitely encourage people to check it out. But Ryan, you and I were talking before we were recording, and yes, these are short fields for the Santa Anita Oaks and Santa Anita Derby, but talk about some good horses. This was something I posted on X the other day. The average sales price of the horses entered in the Santa Anita Derby, $1.35 million. Hello. There are some expectations here. So it might only be 5, but it's the right 5. That's for sure.
It is the right 5, and we were talking about 3 of those entries would probably be the favorites anywhere in the country for these big Derby preps, and the other one, talking about Baeza, would be certainly a major factor in both of those out-of-state preps as well. But we get them all in the same Derby prep, so it's going to be fast and furious, 5 horses, so the points are reduced a little bit, but the competition's there without a doubt.
Absolutely. And Kaylee, this is going to be an opportunity. I feel like, we've been able to see Quiet Side, run a couple of times. We've been able to see a Good Cheer come back and run down at Fairgrounds. We've not seen Tenma in a minute. And so that she's been very high atop your Oaks list this whole time. So it's a real exciting day just to see her come back to the track, put in one more effort before going to Churchill Downs.
Definitely. And I feel like the last couple of times she faced a really short field, unfortunately. And I know that obviously these fields are still pretty short, but definitely more competitive than the last couple of races that she's been in. So I'm really excited for a bit more of a challenge, although I don't really view it as such, at least a little bit more of a challenge for her, is going to be exciting. And that should be good to send her into the Oaks as well after facing those short fields pretty consistently throughout these preps. So happy to see that.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of that, let's transition and jump right into the Santa Anita Oaks and talk about this 6-horse race. And your morning line favorite is the number 4 Tenma for trainer Bob Baffert. Your second choice on the morning line is No Bad Beats for Doug O'Neill, followed by Vodka with a Twist. It's a 6-horse field, and yes, Tenma stands over them from a buyer speed figure standpoint, especially if she's able to build off of that last effort. But it's still a field that I feel like there's a lot of competition there. Maybe it's strictly underneath, but I feel like you could go in a few different directions here. Kaylie, you're the Oaks expert, so I'm going to start with you first. I know we all like Tenma up top, but talk a little bit about what attracts you to Tenma and then maybe some other horses that you were taking a look at in this race.
Yeah, obviously Tenma has been very dominant. She's the best filly that Baffert has on the Oaks Trail. And we've seen her put on some pretty consistently good performances, especially the last two, winning those both the Starlet and the Lost Virginess as well. And she beat some pretty nice horses out in California in both of those. I don't think that it's going to matter too much the pace that she has in front of her. I mean, she's been able to get the job done under a few different circumstances. Baffert does have another filly in here, the number 2 Silent Law, who, like Matthew was saying actually to me earlier, that he liked this filly a bit in the beginning, and I think that she's a pretty nice filly as well. I think that Baffert might have her entered here to kind of, maybe give Tenma some pace to run at as well. So I didn't pay too close of attention to the other Baffert entry in here, especially from a buyer perspective. Those last two aren't really up to par with the rest of the field. So I look towards the number 1 underneath, look forward for Mike McCarthy. This horse, last time we saw her was in the Honeybee. She had a bit of an unfortunate start there, as did a lot of nice fillies that day. So not going to hold that one too much against her. But the start before that, she won. And prior to that, she did finish second to Tenma, beating Vodka with the Twist. Tenma beat her by almost 2 lengths that day. And usually we see Tenma pretty far ahead of the field. So this filly, although, not super competitive against Tenma, did come a little bit close to her in that race. And that she's a filly that has good speed as well. Although not displayed in the Honeybee, she's breaking from the 1 hole today. So she should be pretty forwardly placed. And I think that's going to help her sit a nice trip. And she's a filly that's shown a lot of potential and fits from a buyer speed figure standpoint, besides that Honeybee. So
certainly her best is very capable of running a competitive race to Tenma, to your point, only less than 2 lengths behind her in that previous race together. And honestly, it's one of those things where you're right. A lot of times the margin of victory for Tenma is so significant that when you see it as only being a length and 3/4, it's noteworthy that somebody was able to kind of hold a candle to Tenma in that regard. Now, we should point out, Look Forward is cross entered in the Ashland, but as we were talking about, the Ashland is moving around. It was supposed to be Friday. Now it's Monday. So, trainer Michael McCarthy, I don't know if the horse is already shipped or not, but that's, I think, something just to keep an eye on. And whether or not the race gets moved around, whether that changes his plans on wanting to keep Look Forward maybe out in California to run on the scheduled Saturday rather than moving the horse around and having a little bit more uncertainty. So something to keep in mind. But I think at 10-1, that's a horse that if she runs, presents outstanding value here. Ryan, I'll turn things over to you. You really, obviously, big fan of Tenma as well. You have Vodka with a Twist for Phil D'Amato in the second choice. Do you see it as strictly an underneath play, or do you think Vodka with a Twist has a real chance to maybe upset the favorite in this race?
In this field, I think Vodka with a Twist is only my underneath play. She's a really hard trying horse. She's only been out of the trifecta once in all of her career starts, and that was on the debut going 4.5 at Keeneland. So ever since then, she's been a really nice horse, and she runs her race every single time. She's just not quite up to that A-plus caliber that I believe Tenma is. And certainly she's the force to be reckoned with in this bunch. But Vodka with a Twist has every reason to get second. Again, she fires every time. She has a nice running style that I think, as long as she gets in the field for the Oaks, it's certainly a horse that I want probably underneath. One day she's going to have her day and she's going to get a win at probably a really nice price, because all these seconds and thirds are eventually going to discourage the bettors from taking her at 4 or 5 to 1. So she's going to pop at 10 to 1. I'm just not sure when, but I don't think it's going to be this weekend.
Yeah, I certainly, like you too, I also see Tenma as being a horse that's very difficult to beat here. If you're playing those horizontals, early pick fives, an obvious single, I think, in this particular spot. She really is a single or a horse that you have to just completely toss and play against, assuming she doesn't fire. But she's been so good the last couple of times out. And that certainly buyer of a 92 last time just towers over the field. And if she's able to build upon that in any way, shape, or form, I mean, she's going to win by 5, 10, 15 lengths. I mean, there's really nobody within shouting distance of that number in the field. So she looks really tough. I do want to give a shout to Silent Law, who is the other Baffert. And maybe this is just my East Coast other Chad Brown sort of PTSD kicking in. But whenever I see a trainer with 2 horses, I just get a little, it's the other Chad, it's the other Todd, it's the other Brad Cox horse. And so you always have to be considerate of that. But I pointed out because I know this one's a sprinter, and I know this one has been a very forwardly placed horse. But sired by Tis the Law. Now, those of us up here in New York, we know Tis the Law. And one of the things about the Tis the Law babies is they've really liked going long. They've actually excelled going longer, both on dirt and turf. So I think this one has the pedigree to certainly stretch out and has been training very aggressively. You've seen that 59-1 5 furlong bullet followed up with a 48-4 5 furlong bullet. Baffert's been building in plenty of conditioning, plenty of foundation. You see a 6 furlong work going back to February 28th. So my hope is that this one's kind of been able to run some of these races and is a horse that, again, it's gotten the foundation back. And I just wonder, Ryan, you know this, how many times do we see a little bit more of a merry-go-round track at Santa Anita? And I just wonder if this one gets out up front, probably isn't good enough to win, but just kind of holds on for second. And again, if we think Tenma fires the way she is, there could be a lot of discouraged horses running in 3rd and 4th place.
Without a doubt. I think playing an exacta, 4-2 in here, just with the 2 Bafferts, certainly a smart way to go, because there's more than one occasion, I've seen a Baffert whose numbers don't match up versus the field, runs a huge second, behind another Baffert typically, or sometimes they'll beat, the favored Baffert, in this case, Tenma. I think Tenma is just too good of an animal in this case. So I'd play 4-2. It would not surprise me if it came in that way.
And let's talk about the 5, who, Ryan, you and I have a little bit of underneath as well. And this is No Bad Beats for Doug O'Neill. I'll let you kind of talk a little bit about this horse, who's the second choice on the morning line.
Yeah, love my guy Doug O'Neill. Awesome guy. So I'm rooting for his horse here. Paired up buyers in the last 2 races, which I like to see. Some good progression. Broke her maiden in the restricted company, but then came right back and won versus the open non-N1X allowance company. Stretches out to 2 turns here. Certainly bred to like it. Obviously, a question of class here is this is going to be her biggest test to date. But as we get closer to the Oaks, this is pretty much the last shot. So. Hey, I would love for No Bad Beats to get a good second or something and get her into the Oaks field.
Absolutely. No. And I think it would certainly be, you're right. If she gets second, she's in the Oaks field, and we'll go from there. But yeah, a horse that certainly has shown some promise and ability to potentially stretch out as she's going to have to do that for Saturday for the first time. But let's head to the headliner, which is your Santa Anita Derby. And it's a 5-horse field. And, we said it's the right 5 horses. You're not going to get much better than Journalism, Citizen Bull, and Barnes as a top 3 choices. And I think all of us think Baeza is a pretty legitimate horse. And we'll talk about that one in a bit. Kaylie, I'm going to let you go first, because perhaps you're doing the thing that I should do. Journalism is my number 1 horse in my Kentucky Derby top 5. Yet somehow I don't have Journalism as my top choice in this race. I can't make sense of this. You, on the other hand, did not overthink it. And you said Journalism's the best horse. I'm putting this horse up top. Talk a little bit about this one and why you like Journalism in this spot.
Well, I guess you're starting with the fact that these horses are all stretching out to 1 1/8 for the first time. So that's definitely where I started. And Citizen Bull, we saw come back and win the Robert B. Lewis, obviously pretty impressively. He won in gate to wire fashion, as he's won, all of his wins have come in gate to wire fashion besides the maiden. So looking at these two very close horses on the morning line, I did end up landing on journalism just because, Citizen Bull is going to have to stretch out to 1.125 miles for the first time. And I do think that he could face some pressure from a horse like perhaps the number 5 Baeza, or maybe maybe any other horse in here like the number 3 Westwood as well. And I don't think that Barnes is going to be sent forward just based on watching that last work as well. So I do think that they will be sending Citizen Bull here, and I just don't see him stealing it on the front end. And we all saw the way that journalism was able to pass Barnes like he was nothing up on the lead. So I don't think that he'll have a problem doing that, even if Citizen Bull is up. And we've seen journalism close into any sort of fraction. So I have no doubt with this horse, with him getting this win. I mean, I do see obviously the potential in Citizen Bull. He's a horse that I wouldn't be mad if he won. I mean, he was the champion 2-year-old, and I don't think gets the proper respect that he might deserve from, the run that he put on as a 2-year-old. But yeah, I did land on journalism just because of how I see the dynamics of this race setting up. You have horses trying things for the first time, and I view him to be the most reliable here.
Well, he certainly has the biggest pedigree. I mean, Curlin out of an Uncle Mo mare, he's bred for this. He's bred to go 1.125 miles at 1.25 miles. You're right. The ease with which he just blew right by Barnes in the stretch of that San Vicente was certainly something to see. And the fact that you're right, that was an easy lead that Barnes got that day, and he still went right by him. And it's going to be a fun showdown between these top two, because these are clearly the top two horses in Southern California. Ryan, it's interesting. I was talking with Kaylie about this earlier today. I feel like Citizen Bull has become almost overrated or underappreciated in some ways, that we've all been looking at the shiny new object in Bob's barn, whether that was Barnes, whether that was Cornucopian. We were all kind of looking at that. And the Citizen Bull has just been sitting there doing nothing but winning. And Bob has been managing this horse like he's the number one horse in the barn the whole time. Hasn't run since that Robert B. Lewis, only the second run of 2025. You and I both have him up top. I'm interested in hearing why you think he can get the victory on Saturday at the Santa Anita Derby.
Yeah, he has been managing this horse like this is his all-star in the barn. I completely agree with you. I don't want this horse in the Derby, but I want this horse on Saturday. I think the exact same scenario is going to play out in his last two races. I think he's going to get out to a lead. Kaylie mentioned Barnes' last work, where Barnes was kind of rated to, not be an entire speedball of a horse. So I think that that's maybe going to be the goal, and that makes sense looking at his past performances. Barnes likes to have a target. I think he runs a little better that way. I think last out, talking for Barnes or the Crook in the San Felipe, I was joking around yesterday. That's the worst 105 buyer anybody's ever run, because it immediately just missed so many people off of him, off of buyer, off of time form. I mean, Barnes is clearly the second fastest horse, but Citizen Bull, you mentioned, has been managed the right way. He's coming into this the right way. He's going to, I think, fire a really big shot here on Saturday. I think he just is going to have everything his own way. No slide against journalism. Journalism is also my number one Derby pick going into the first Saturday in May, but similar to Sovereignty, to me, he doesn't have to win this race. He doesn't have to be at 100%. Citizen Bull, I think, is a horse that just kind of fires his A effort when he gets out there, and he looks really, really tough to pass when he gets a lead the way he has in the last two, and I don't really see that changing. The added furlong here, going to the 1.125 miles could be a bit of a question. Maybe that puts him to a little bit of a test coming off a break since February, but at the end of the day, I think he's going to be comfortable enough up there, and he'll be able to win by a comfortable enough margin when all is said and done. So yeah, Citizen Bull on top for me.
Yeah, I echo your sentiments about, Citizen Bull and just obviously a horse that should be able to get the 1.125 miles under the right circumstances. Into Mischief up top is always a little bit of a question mark. Out of a Distorted Humor mare, again, a little bit more sprint influence there. So I do think, looking forward to going 10 furlongs or even facing pace pressure at 9 furlongs, I'd be much more hesitant to selecting him. But I think Martin Garcia, who's undefeated on him, knows what to do, which is just don't overthink it. You go straight to the front. Barnes is, Barnes rates, which based upon that last work certainly looks to be the case. Then he kind of also plays a little bit with Baeza and probably keeps Baeza from pressing Citizen Bull a little too much because he's outside there. And so he's going to run that kind of flanking position that we saw Rodriguez pull for Barnes in one of his previous races. So again, everybody just kind of seems to work around Citizen Bull. Listen, if journalism wins this race, I don't even know what odds you're going to get in Kentucky because he's going to be the overwhelming favorite. Because if he's able to overcome a speed favoring track and short fields against really everything set up against him, then you set up the first Saturday in May where as long as he draws a decent post position, he's going to be a dominant feature and a dominant horse in that race potentially. So I think, much like you, I like Citizen Bull Saturday. I like journalism at Churchill Downs for the Kentucky Derby, but going to be a lot of fun. Kaylie, I want to let you chime back in.
Yeah, I think just honestly the most exciting part of the race probably as well is the number 5, who we don't really know what that horse is capable of yet. And I believe Citizen Bull is a very good horse, and I might not want him this Saturday, but depending on maybe how the Derby draws up, maybe I want him in the Derby. I don't know. I mean, the pedigree is definitely, there are some questions with distance, but under the right conditions, I do see it. But also, you haven't really seen a lot of the intermischiefs out of this Derby group stretch out and improve either. So that was also something else that I'm noting. And I couldn't come up with an exact trip of how he could have things all up his own way on the front end. I mean, I really do wonder if the number 5 Baeza or the number 3 even, who's I know a long shot. I mean, are these horses going to let Citizen Bull get loose like that again? I don't know. I don't know, but I do think that it's pretty reliable after we saw how journalism was able to close on Barnes when he got a dream trip to use that horse. But I mean, Citizen Bull is a very good horse. I couldn't come up with the scenario like you guys could have, the exact trip maybe of him being able to get it. But I think Baeza is a very exciting horse. I'm pretty excited. I mean, what are the odds? This damn Puka in the last 2 years has classic winners. I mean, if you're a pedigree person, you're really thinking that this McKinsey that's going to continue to stretch out here today is probably going to improve off of that. And maybe we'll see a bit more what this one is capable of as well.
Listen, Baeza is certainly the pedigree play, and I might put a future bet on the Preakness just because that would complete the Triple Crown triumvirate for Puka, who has the Derby with Mage 2 years ago, the Belmont Stakes with Dornoch last year, and now potentially coming back with Baeza. You mentioned sired by McKinsey, those first 2 sired by Good Magic, so a slightly different bloodline, but still very, very productive horse already for John Sheriff's, breaking his maiden last time out. All 3 of us have this horse running third. I think all 3 of us think this horse has a little bit of a shot, at least on Saturday. I wouldn't be shocked if Baeza upset the field by an extra 6-1. And I think, honestly, from a value standpoint, is probably the best play on the board.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I agree. True. I'm curious, what are your guys' thoughts on the other Sheriff's entrant drawn right next to Citizen Bull? Is there a chance this is a rabbit type of an entry, or is this the entry to make the kind of the point system? I know we're already kind of cut in half, but I feel like Westwood, he runs some pretty quick early fractions. So I think if Pereira really has some strong intention, maybe he could press Citizen Bull early.
Maybe. I mean, it's interesting. He's still a maiden, so we don't know what his winning trip is necessarily. In terms of does he need the lead to is he kind of that sort of a speedball? To this point, he's rated off the pace. So it just makes me, if it was one of those things where I saw a bunch of 1s across the running lines, I'd be like, I know exactly what they're doing. They're sending hard in trying to do that. It's a little bit more projection with Westwood, but you're right. The fact that it's a Sheriff's and you're right. We should already point out this is already a 75% race, basically, with just the 5 entries. So the winning horse is only going to get 75 points, not the 100. So, I do think that the racing office probably did try to rustle up and maybe Sheriff's is doing everybody a little bit of a solid having Westwood in this race just to make sure it doesn't become a 50-point prep race, which would be a real kind of black eye for Santa Anita and for this. And it will also make it tougher just from a qualification standpoint for some of these horses who might finish second or third. So it's going to be interesting to see for sure. And Kaylie, you were going to say something about Baeza, and I want to let you finish your thought from earlier on Baeza in terms of being a potential value play and an upset pick in this field.
Yeah, I just kind of echoing what you guys said. You guys kind of wrapped it up, kind of exactly what I was going to say, but I think definitely is an interesting price play. I was even tempted to put the horse second over Barnes. I mean, I am pretty excited to see Barnes be able to sit a tracking trip maybe this time around, because we all know that it didn't work out for him up on the lead when journalism flew by him the way he did. So I think you'll definitely see him sitting kind of a similar trip to Baeza here. And I'd be curious to see, which is the last of the two standing out of the two of those. But from a pedigree standpoint, I think Baeza might honestly be a better option, and pretty excited to see how this one runs.
Absolutely. And, we should say Barnes, it's interesting. If you've been paying attention to XBTV, you've noticed the workouts. They've kind of been all over the place. Some of them have not looked particularly good. The work with Rodriguez in particular, he just looked completely lost when they took the blinkers off of him. They put the blinkers back on last time. He looks a little bit more like himself, rating at an object ahead of him, running at another horse is probably when he's at his best potentially, which is a little bit different for a lot of Bob Baffert horses. But I do want to circle back something to Kaylie, to what you said earlier about Citizen Bull in the Kentucky Derby, which I think is something that is getting overlooked right now. All of these Kentucky Derby prep winners are off the pace horses. All of them. Tiztastic, all these horses that are coming from off the pace, the winners of the Louisiana Derby, all these other Arkansas Derbies, etc., Sandman, so on and so forth. At some point, somebody's got to go to the lead. And wouldn't it be funny if it's with the Kentucky Derby and Citizen Bull finds himself running 24-48 fractions on the front end with nobody bothering him because everybody else in the race is a closer. And so there aren't a lot of speedballs right now signed up for the Kentucky Derby. And, Citizen Bull, again, maybe gets the right sort of trip in that case.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, definitely, I don't want him from a pedigree standpoint in the Derby, but I guess it's all about, the setup that he's going to get. Definitely, I mean, East Avenue is another speedball.
That's true.
Pretty excited to see how that one runs on Tuesday. Try to think about his Derby chances and maybe the type of trip that he's going to sit, especially coming back off, some two subpar efforts, unfortunate efforts, but yeah, I definitely think that Citizen Bull, we're going to learn a lot about him on Saturday if he's able to face pressure and, or if he's even able to get that type of setup. But if he does get soft fractions, I mean, it's game over.
Yeah.
So.
No, going to be a lot of fun. By the way, when you said Tuesday for the Bluegrass, I just thought in my mind of switching back and forth between $7,500 claimers at Parks and the Grade 1 Bluegrass throughout the day. So that is the life of a degen of us just, following like Mahoning Valley, Turf Paradise, Parks, the Bluegrass, and then just going back around. So it should be a lot of fun. Ryan, thank you again for joining us and talking through these races taking place out at Santa Anita. And just one more time for the folks at home, let them know where they can find you and what you got going on.
Yeah, you can find me on X at 20 lengths clear, or find me on YouTube at The Gallop Out. We'll have Big Hoof Energy, our second show, going tomorrow with Kaylie and you, Matthew, as we go over Wood Memorial Day at Aqueduct. And we also have Get Bucked, which goes on once a week, typically earlier in the week, and we'll preview a major sequence somewhere around. With Keeneland starting up, you can pretty much bet it's going to be a Keeneland sequence once a week with us already having a New York show in the books. So that's pretty much what I got going on. And I'm excited. We're ramping up to the biggest part of the year. So I'll be in Keeneland next week. I might have to change my flight plans around with this Sunday to Sunday racing, get half the meet all in 1 week. So that wouldn't be too bad.
Exactly. Get your money's worth. I love it. Kaylie, you and I will be back later this week to preview the Wood and the Gazelle, as well as a separate show for the Ashland and the Bluegrass. So make sure to tune back into all of those. Make sure to press that like button and subscribe to NYRA Bets YouTube today. For Ryan Anderson and Kaylie Shapiro, my name is Matthew DeSantis, wishing you a great and prosperous day at the races, and reminding you, friends, it's now post time.